I feel like I look very tired, which is a pretty accurate representation because I've had a pretty wacky few days, and they've all been amazing, so I wanted to tell you guys about that. Normally I do my live videos on Mondays at 5, and this past Monday I was in the middle of working, so it didn't make sense, and then by the time I was done, I was so exhausted. Today is the first day that I've really kind of I don't know, I guess I should just tell you about what's been going on. So I think I mentioned in my last video, although my last video was very much about what's going on in the rest of the world and my feelings on that, and I think that's still a very important subject matter, so none of the personal side of things are meant to diminish what's happening to other people around the world. There's been just kind of a lot of chaotic things, I feel like. It's like getting, as I mentioned in one of my recent videos, it feels like, for me at least, I'm curious if you guys feel this way, I almost kind of feel numb to everything that's happening, because there's so much happening. There's so much destruction and death and horrible things, and it's it's just kind of weird, I guess. And I think the numbness is I was talking to my mom yesterday, and I've had such a kind of chaotic, distracted few days that normally I read the news every morning, but I hadn't, and I didn't even know that there were... Actually, no. I heard about the California wildfires, which are not affecting where I live right now. There were some, a month ago, that were really close to where I live. But my friend on this project I'm working on mentioned the fires, and again, my I don't know if numb is the right word, but it's almost like this nonchalance of oh, there's horrible fires. It's almost like it's not a big deal anymore. So I remember actually kind of feeling this way around one of the big natural disasters years ago. It might have been New Orleans, when the huge hurricane and flooding happened. I remember hearing about it. And part of it was I just didn't realize how big of a deal it was. And then it just kept escalating and escalating. And that to me is kind of a scary thing. It's a little different now because I feel like a lot worse has happened. But I also wonder, is the media making it worse? Are we being manipulated? Are things worse than they have been? Or is it just our perspective? Is it our access to things? Is it that we can, there's, for example, the Las Vegas shootings, it got to me for the point where I was getting so annoyed with the coverage, and that's a very selfish emotion, I understand, but it was every time I would flip through television or look online, I wanted to know how we can figure things out. I wanted to know kind of two basic things, which was how I can help, because I felt really helpless and confused because there's all these different ways to help. And I also felt I just wanted to know what happened, why, and how we can maybe prevent it if it's possible. But instead it felt maybe because they don't have as many answers about the latter, they were focusing so much on all of the victims, but almost in an exploited way. So it was I got to the point where I'm I don't want to hear these stories anymore. And I don't know if this is not from an insensitive standpoint. It just felt they were being very exploited. Look how bad things are. It's it's constantly thrown in our face how bad things are. And then, I don't know about you guys, I would really love to hear this in the comments, but are they really that bad? And if so, if they're that bad, how do we change it? Why are we one of my biggest frustrations is that when people focus on what's wrong but don't focus on the solutions. That's actually been a reoccurring theme for me in probably the past week. So it's kind of interesting. Maybe that's why I'm so triggered by this. But it drives me crazy because I'm very solution oriented. I'm very strategic oriented. When something's wrong, my brain's okay, how can I fix it? I am a positive thinker and have positive outlooks on things, and so if something bad is happening, something is going wrong, let's take action and move forward to it. And I feel like right now it's just like, this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong. And it's like, are we being manipulated, or is the general public being manipulated to think that things are so horrible that we get depressed and we want to take more medications and we want to eat horrible food to soothe us? And is there some like conspiracy, for lack of a better word, to get us to feel miserable? Like, is misery a way to get us to consume more? Consumerism, right? Is it a way to get us complacent? Is it a way for us to trust our president more because we need a leader? This came up a lot with like 9/11. There are some people that believe that, I'm not even going to get into 9/11, but I remember like feeling like, this is like too coincidental, because a lot of people were not happy with George Bush, at least people that I knew. George Bush Jr. That's his name, right? Is it Junior? I know he's the second George Bush, whatever he went by. This is how into politics I am. But I remember like thinking, man, he just got, I think it was his second term. It's such a blur for me. Again, I'm not really that into politics, and I will fully admit that. But what, my point is, it felt like people weren't that into him, including myself. And then 9/11 happened, and it's like suddenly we had to trust our president in this term of crisis. And I think a lot of similar things are happening with Trump right now. There are people like me who are not his biggest fans and don't like the way things are happening in this country. And are we being distracted, right? And again, these are just some thoughts in my head. I don't have a very strong opinion on them. I'm just kind of curious. I'd love to hear your opinions on it. But are things as bad as they seem, or is the media being like manipulating the news so that things seem a lot worse? Whereas, are things always this bad in a way? Like, we have disasters and horrible things happening around the country in the world pretty much every single day. And like, there's a lot of things that don't even get the attention of the news, that we don't see as important. It feels right now there's so much drama happening in the United States, but what about what's happening around the rest of the world? And most importantly, where are the solutions? That is what really frustrates me. It's like, you go on social media, it's people ranting and raving, it's people being upset about things, and my mind is like, hi Walter. That's not what my mind is like, but Walter is live right now. I guess my mind just keeps thinking like, okay, like, things are bad, like, how do we fix them? And then it's like, before we even have a chance to fix them, there is something else. Like, I felt overwhelmed by not knowing what to do. If I wanted to like help somehow with the Las Vegas shootings, and I wanted to help with all the hurricanes, and there was a earthquake in Mexico, and it was just like all this stuff happening at once. And now there's fires in California that are killing people, like, and I'm seeing like lists of ways to help and where's to donate. And the first thought I had, this happened right before I started this video, I saw like a PDF of like what you can do to help for the fires. I don't know if they're wildfires. This is how little I've paid attention to the news in the past few days. But a friend posted this on Facebook, and my immediate thought was, oh my gosh, I haven't even donated to the other causes yet, and now I'm being asked to donate to something else. And there's like, immediately I'm like, how do I make more money so that I can donate more money to help all of these things? And like, that's where my mind goes. But it's like, it just feels like there's one thing after another, is my point. I didn't really mean to start off this video that way, but I guess this is kind of bottled up. And I think that I would really love to hear a lot of your opinions on this. I just want to find solutions, you guys. Like, I think natural disasters are more challenging, right? There's not always a immediate solution to them. Maybe there is an immediate solution to any of this stuff. But like, for me, obviously natural disasters, I always wonder if it's related to climate change. It seems like they're getting worse and worse. We have fires. I haven't researched the fires, so I really don't know at this point. Were they started by somebody? I'm at Jason's and his cats are playing around me right now. Were the fires caused by somebody accidentally? Were they reckless behavior, or was it a natural thing? I don't know, but I just want to know how we can resolve this stuff. And is that part of the distraction too? Or are we meant to be so distracted that we're trying to fix all these issues and we don't even notice like even bigger things like the North Korea stuff happening right now? That was like the big concern. And then suddenly Las Vegas happened. And then suddenly, all these natural disasters happened and we can't pay attention to everything anymore. And so my other big point is that because I believe in looking for solutions and want to live a positive life, I don't want to be sucked into negativity. As you'll see often in these videos, these videos tend to be about like challenges that I'm facing. But if you know me well at all, if you've been following me for a while, I guess like sometimes these videos are like a slice of like 30 or 45 minutes of my life each week. And it's like they tend to be based in like frustration or, working through something. But deep down, I always have this core of positivity. And I don't know if that is the case with most people, which is really sad to me. I feel like hi Roxanne, I feel like there's so much sadness, depression, frustration, anger, all of these things. And that's like the bigger epidemic. And I think I talked about that in one of the most recent videos. It's like, I want to relieve suffering. So I feel like a lot of these issues that we face come down to emotional suffering and fear. Now, with that out of the way, I will tell you guys about the positive things happening in my life, which I feel like it's nice to turn our attention to this. And I also don't really believe in distracting ourselves from something that's very important, right? Like, I feel like it's very important to focus on the positive, but acknowledge the negative and figure out a way to turn the negative into something positive, right? Hi, Debbie, and bye, Debbie. Thanks for being here. You just reminded me of something else I need to do today. Man, I have like the longest to-do list, so it feels never ending. Anyways, I can turn, one thing that I've been practicing is turning, negative situations into positive. So, for example, I have a lot to do right now. My to-do list feels never ending. The positive spin is, wow, I feel so grateful that I can do whatever I want with my day, and I've created a life that's based around the things that I love, right? So that is like a good pattern for me to get into, is like, how do I rethink things? How do I restructure the way that I say things, the mental habits I have, the patterns, and get away from negative thinking and negative talking, and think. There's a cat right behind my camera. And just put this positive spin on it, right? And I feel like it's easier to say when you're not in crisis. So again, let's take all this with a grain of salt. I am very grateful that I'm not in crisis right now, but it's possible that I could be at any moment's notice. There was a Facebook post today about somebody's fire. I don't know if it was related to the ones happening in California, but how, she only had a moment to grab something from her home before she had to evacuate. And I started thinking, like, what would I do? What would I grab if my home was on fire? If I, of course you want to get yourself out and your loved ones, your animals, that sort of thing. But then you just think about, well, am I prepared for these things? And so preparation, I feel like, is very important, and awareness. This came up for me a lot when I was thinking about the Las Vegas shooting. I was having conversations with people, and I'm like, everybody has like this different theory. Well, why do people jump to the ground like in the middle of this field? They're just like sitting ducks. And why, the people that ran away, like everybody has these ideas about what they would do in that situation. But I have no idea what I would do if I was in a mass shooting. People are like, you should zigzag. I'm like, would that be the first thing on my mind? Or would I just like, do you even think straight in those situations, right? So now I want to prepare myself and maybe help prepare other people for those situations, right? Like, what can we do to be prepared? Race to Nowhere just said, I'm in the active earthquake zone in Italy. Yeah, it's like, wherever we live, right, we're susceptible to something, earthquakes and fires and hurricanes and floods and shootings and on and on and on, missiles, and we're all kind of susceptible. It shows us how fragile we are. So another thing that's so important about this is to be grateful. So I keep saying I'll tell you what's going on in my life and what has been happening in the last week. The positive things that have happened and also been kind of distracting and time consuming for me is I went to Cabo for my friend's wedding this weekend, and man, that taught me a lot. That gave me a lot of gratitude on so many levels. I'd never been to Mexico before. And overall, it was a phenomenal experience. I was really nervous about traveling internationally because I haven't traveled internationally for a few years, and the last time I traveled was on a cruise. So does that even fully count? But I've been to Europe several times, never been to Mexico. And I think it's so interesting, especially now with the presidency, our government at the moment. But the big thing that I realized while I was there was like how grateful I am to be a U.S. citizen, because we can complain all we want, but even in places like Cabo, which revolve around tourism, like the citizens, from what I understand, again, this is still coming from a lot of ignorance, but from what I gathered during this trip, they make such little money. It was astounding. What I was told by one of the employees I was staying at a resort, an all-inclusive resort, and it was kind of this weird feeling at times because I was being catered to, like my every desire was being catered to at this resort, and it was inexpensive for me. Like, I've had those experiences at really high-end places in the U.S., and, that's often like I'm traveling with somebody who's paying for a trip, and, you go to a nice hotel, like the Four Seasons, for example, and it's like you get this incredible service. In the U.S., that's typically something you receive if you're paying a lot of money. But when I was in Cabo, I went to this resort, and it cost me like under $500 to be there for 3 nights and 4 days, and that covered my room, all my food, all my drinks. Like literally the only money I spent in Cabo was when I went to this really cool organic market that I couldn't even believe existed there, but that's another story. But relatively inexpensive flight. Like it was just a really cheap trip in terms of what I received at this tropical destination. And I talked to one of the employees there, and he told me that he makes $5 a day. At first I thought, oh, he must mean $5 an hour, and I was shocked to hear that, right? Because minimum wage in the U.S. is, what is it, like $10 to $12 an hour? That's minimum wage. That's like if you can't get another job, like that's the least that you'll make for most people. But $5 a day, and they're working 9 hours a day. It's crazy, right? How they make up for that, and the only reason that these resort employees are really able to pay their bills and take care of their family is through tips. And so before I went to Cabo, I remember reading up about it, and they're like, oh yeah, like you only have to give tips to certain people, and it's not even a have to, it's just encouraged. And so I brought a little money, right, like thinking I would leave some for the house, the people cleaning my room, and maybe the bell, I don't want to say bellman, but like bellman or woman, like whoever's helping me bring things up to my room and all that. It's typical U.S. like tipping system. When I got there, though, I realized that it's kind of messed up because they market it as everybody else is taken care of, like you don't need to tip them. There are all these restaurants on these resorts, or at least the one I was staying at. There was like 4 restaurants there, and all the food was free. So as a customer, you could go there and just pay to, not pay at all, right? So you just go into these restaurants and you order, and like it's kind of this weird experience because like you can just get up and leave your table at the end. You don't have to pay a bill. You don't have to do anything. And I really wish that I had been told more about these places, because I didn't end up leaving tips very often at these restaurants. I probably part of the all-inclusive resort experience is like you'll restaurant hop, or at least that's what I did. And so like I would eat a little at one restaurant, go to another one, and like it was like really fun. But each time I was being served, like there's people like typical service. It wasn't like a buffet. It wasn't very casual. Like they're coming and taking my order. They're bringing my food. They're like asking if I need anything. And I, now in hindsight, wish that I had brought a lot more. The cats are playing some crazy game right now. Can you guys hear that? It's really amusing, actually. And a little distracting. Somebody just joined. I'm just kind of talking about things that are happening in my life. In my recent trip to Cabo is the current subject. So, anyways, I really wish that I had tipped more, because what I learned from this one employee is that, like, if he doesn't get tipped, then he barely can pay his bills. He can barely afford food. He can barely afford gas. Like, we have similar situations in the U.S. You hear this sometimes. Like people, like let's say single moms who work 3 jobs and barely see their kids because they have to work so much to pay all the bills, right? We have that issue in the U.S. big time. But it just felt really weird for me to be at this beautiful resort. Like the people that worked there were some of the most professional, kind, helpful people I've ever experienced while traveling. And again, I've been blessed to stay at some really nice hotels in the country and in Europe and all of that. I've had some really nice experiences in my life, but this is almost like on a whole nother level. I actually kind of experienced this on the cruise. It kind of reminded me of the cruise at times. Oh my God. If you guys could see the cats, they are like galloping around. I guess like that was a moment of gratitude that I had the money to give them to help support them. And even $5 tip was like a huge deal because they make $5 a day. So when you give somebody a $5 tip at these resorts, you're doubling their pay. That's like if you make $100 a day here in the US and somebody gives you a $100 bill. Right? And so Vi just said, you tip, hold on, it disappeared. You tip only if you like the service. So they really try to help. You are in the US, you are kind of forced to tip, right? But my point is, at this resort, if I had kept track of how many people helped me in those 4 days that I was at this resort in Cabo, I was probably helped by at least 20 people at the restaurants, in the lobby, at the front desk, at the bell people, whoever, like, the people at the pools, the people at the, just walking around. Like, there's so many employees at this one resort. I really, in hindsight, wish that I had brought like $100 and tipped every single one of them, right? But I didn't even think I needed to based on the literature I received and all that. And now I'm like, it's even if it was $1 to each person, that's a nice tip for them. And from what I understand about their financial structure. And so I feel grateful that I could, if I had known, I could have brought that money with me and help these people. And I also feel grateful, not to diminish their experience, but like sometimes we have to see how other people are living to be grateful for how we're living, and not to say that we're any more deserving, but just like that perspective to say, you know what, like I can complain, but man, like there are other people that are really suffering. And it's a reality I think a lot of us know, but we don't always recognize. And so I guess like a lot of these natural disasters, these things that we're seeing happening around the world, like the positive spin is not to sit there and feel horrible and just think, oh my gosh, the world's falling apart. Is it falling apart in your life? Like, are your problems as relatively like bad? Like, be grateful to have like the things that we complain about sometimes. That, I live in Los Angeles, like it's an amazing city, and the things that I complain about and the things that other people complain about are so minor relative to all this suffering that's happening. So I think that if we can help other people, part of that begins with being grateful for where we are and recognizing how much we have and how good we have it. And once we have that recognition, then we can feel more powerful to help other people, right? So for me, I'm like, I don't need that $5. I would so much rather give that to somebody else who needs it more than me, whose current structure, the way that their life is organized because of the city they live in and the education that they have and all these other factors that go into why somebody is in a certain circumstance, right? And this is a huge, huge topic, so I'm really just skimming the surface. But as part of some of my takeaways, you know, I was on this trip, I was grateful to be there. I was grateful to have the money to make that trip. I was grateful to have the friends that invited me to their wedding. I was grateful to witness their wedding. I'm grateful for just a beautiful place that exists in the world. Like Cabo is so amazing. There was a lot of gratitude on that trip. And then I came back from that trip. I had to get up at 3:30 in the morning to catch a shuttle to take me to my flight. And Race to Nowhere says, I'm grateful for your cats. They're not my cats. I kind of consider them my cats because I've been with them since they were kittens. But they're technically Jason's cats. And I wish I had like a 360 camera that you guys can move around and watch them. Because it's like, here, I'll show you this one. Just a little. I don't know what he's doing up there, but he's playing with something. And then we have this one here who's also wondering what the hell he's doing. And then this one, I guess this guy's the center of attention right now. And then there's the black one. He's kind of hidden. So there's three. There's this Lynx, Claudia, and Julius, the baby. And somehow this guy, Figaro, is in the center of attention. And speaking of gratitude, Figaro was rescued from a bad situation. He was we believe abused and out living on the streets, and Jason rescued him and has given him a really good life, and now his life has turned around a lot. Okay, so Cabo, that's what I did for 4 days. I was there Thursday, Friday, Saturday until early Sunday. So technically I guess 3 days, but whatever. And then I catch this 3:30 shuttle, get to the airport, and had a relatively smooth traveling experience. I signed up for TSA Global Entry. It's technically what it's called, which is like a very wise decision. I think it's mainly useful when you're traveling internationally, but Global Entry also kind of helps you get TSA pre-check. And all I'll say is if you fly a lot, especially if you fly internationally and are going through customs, it is worth it. It's $100 for 5 years, and it's, you know, slightly on the pricey side, but it literally took me a minute to get through customs on my way back from Mexico, and then apparently it almost guarantees you TSA pre-check. Guarantee is not the right word, so technically it does not guarantee it, but you get a very good chance of getting TSA pre-check. And so I'm looking forward to using that for my flights because TSA is my least favorite part of flying. Anyway, so that was all very smooth. I was grateful for that. I got back into Los Angeles at 10 a.m. and was so exhausted because I had only slept for like an hour and a half. I stayed up really late the night before because I just wanted to enjoy my last night in Cabo, and so I think I went to bed at like 1:30 and woke up at 3:30, and so I was a bit of a zombie. And you know, all this traveling, and I barely slept on the flight because it's such a short flight and all that. But I got back and I basically went home, took a 30-minute nap, and then had to get to work. And work for me right now is I'm working on a really cool vegan cooking show that is going to be online. It feels like it's like a Food Network show. It's like one of the best productions I've worked on in many years. If you guys didn't know this about me, I used to work in production. So I used to work on television shows and commercials, music videos, films, all of that. That's a huge part of my history, and I haven't done it in a while, and I really, really miss it. And so it's amazing for me to be back on set. I am helping them with all the social media, so I get to put all my film background and my... I feel like I should turn the camera so that you guys can look over my shoulder while I'm talking and witness. Oh, of course, as soon as I did that, he decides to jump down. Whatever. He is nuts right now. This camera setup doesn't allow me to show you what's happening behind me. But anyways, I'm working on this really cool project. If you guys are vegan, interested in vegan food, keep an eye out for it, although it has a very interesting twist that I won't ruin for you, but it's a little on the controversial side. And anyways, the long story short is I'm so grateful to have this job. I am being paid very well for it, and it's taking a lot of my time and attention. I should actually be working on some stuff right now, but I decided to do this video instead. Maybe I'm just procrastinating. It's been very, very exhausting, and there have been some challenges with it, as is very common for productions. Going because I'm just getting a phone call that I need to attend to, so I will leave it there. But that is the update. That is some of my feelings about things that are going on. This is where my gratitude has been. I'm grateful for everything that I have. I encourage you guys to be grateful for it, to look for opportunities of perspective, to look for ways that you can find solutions, and look for ways that you can be helpful to people that are struggling. I know it's overwhelming, but our overwhelm is relatively so small compared to some of the horrible things that are happening to people. I've been brainstorming a lot about how I can help more, so I can keep you guys posted on like how to find the best way to help, despite, you know, where do you put your attention and your money? I don't know. I don't have the answer yet. It's overwhelming for me to even think about sitting down and figuring that out. But if any of you guys have any great resources, I'd love to hear it. A resource that would really help me is like, if there was one website that was like, here's how to help all these different situations, versus like right now there's so many places that you can donate. One thing I did is I've been taking Lyfts. I prefer to take Lyft over Uber and the ride-sharing app company, and I round up every trip, and the money that, so like let's say my trip is $7.02, it rounds up to $8, and that 98 cents or whatever it is goes to the American Red Cross. I've been doing that for a couple months now, I think after the first hurricane. And it's a minor amount of money, but I literally don't even remember it's happening. It's just been out of my mind, and so it's just kind of like a really simple thing to do. So if you guys have any other simple things that just require a one-time setup, sign up that will be ongoing and will be barely noticeable in your bank account, I'd love to hear more about that. If you know of any other ways to help out, I've actually never donated blood, believe it or not, and now I feel maybe it's time for me to do that. I don't know if it's even helpful. Like, that's another thing. It's like, I don't know. Ugh. Okay, anyways, I gotta go, but long and short of it is I'd love to hear your thoughts on a lot of these issues. I would love to know ways that you're taking action. I would love to know how you put positive things on, positive spins on things, and anything else that you want to share. I just love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, those of you watching live, those of you watching the recording. I appreciate you. I try to do these videos every Monday at 5 p.m. That probably won't happen next Monday because I am working on set that day. And the following Monday, I'll be traveling, so I don't know when these videos will be recorded, but I will do them. I'll do my best to make them at least once a week. All right, guys, I appreciate you. Thank you. I'm grateful for you. I hope that you're doing well despite a lot of the challenges that are happening. I mean, again, I think that they're really happening all the time, and so we just have to figure out how to work through it and do it in a way that doesn't add to the problem, but solves the problem. That's what I hope for. Bye, everyone.